The Battle of Villers-Bocage was one of the more infamous incidents of the Normandy campaign, that took place on the 13th of June 1944, 1 week after the Normandy Landings, which had begun the Western Allies' conquest of German-occupied France. Following the successful Allied landing on June 6, 1944, the combined forces of Britain, Canada and the United States pushed inland. The key to any advance from the beaches was the control of the road network, and the key city of Caen. The Allies and the Germans regarded control of Caen as vital to the Normandy battle. In the days following the D-Day landings, the Germans rapidly established strong defenses in front of the city. However, the nearest the Allies got to an early capture of the city was on June 7, but this advance by the Canadians was halted by the 12th SS Panzer Division and Panzer Division. On the 9th of June, a two-pronged British attempt to surround and capture Caen was defeated. On the right flank of the British Second Army, the 1st U.S. Infantry Division had forced back the German 352nd Infantry Division, and opened a gap in the German front line. Field Marshal Montgommery saw this as his opportunity to regain the initiative in his fight to capture Caen. By sending the veteran British 7th Armoured Division, the famed Desert Rats, through this gap in the German lines to capture the village of Villers-Bocage, he thought they would encircle Caen from the southwest. British commanders hoped that the appearance of a strong force in their rear would force the Panzer Division to withdraw, or be surrounded. With the beleaguered German forces now being squeezed on both fronts, a number of the premier units found themselves leaving the eastern front and heading west. Among them was the 1st SS Panzer Corps, which included Michael Wittmann's 2nd Company of the 101st SS Heavy Panzer Battalion. Already highly experienced and decorated, Michael Wittmann was credited with over 100 tank kills before he arrived in Normandy, most on the eastern front. The 101st Heavy Tank Battalion had been in Belgium on June 6, but was one of the first tank units moved into Normandy by the direct order of Hitler. The exact details of the fighting in Villers-Bocage are controversial, with many different accounts. Part of this was because both propaganda machines soon got to work, with the Germans trying to give Wittmann as much credit as possible. His initial attack is uncontroversial, but the sequence of events after that varies in different accounts. By the 12th of June, Allied formations including the 22nd Armoured Brigade of the famous Desert Rats had reached the outskirts of the city. Having initially sliced through the fast-retreating German defenses with relative ease, things had begun to slow down after a series of hard-fought battles near the town of Tilly-sur-Seulles, defended by the well-equipped Panzer Division. Nevertheless, the flanks of the Panzer had been massively exposed, setting up the possibility of their being completely enclosed by the fast-advancing Allied forces. On the night of the 12th to the 13th of June, the 7th Armoured Division advanced 5 miles through this gap and reached Livry, 7 miles to the southwest of Tilly. On the morning of the 13th of June, a force made up of armour from the 4th County of London Yeomanry, sharpshooters from the 22nd Armoured Brigade, and lorried infantry from the 131st Brigade, advanced 5 miles east from Livry, to Villers-Bocage. One squadron of Sherman tanks from the sharpshooters pushed on east to Hill 213, just to the east of the village on the road to Caen. 101st SS Heavy Panzer Battalion had arrived in Normandy on the 12th of June, after a 5-day drive from Beauvais. The battalion had an establishment of 45 Tiger 1s, but had been reduced to about 17 serviceable tanks by an air attack near Versailles. The 2nd Company had 12 tanks, but through a combination of losses and mechanical failures, only 6 Tigers were present on the 13th of June. These few lead tanks had encamped at Villers-Bocage, 6 miles behind the lines held by the Panzer Division, to do maintenance on the tanks before moving into action. However, upon arriving in Villers-Bocage on June 12, Wittmann had realized the importance of holding both the road junction in the town and the high ground of Hill 213 in the event of an enemy attack, and had positioned his tanks to cover any attacks on their positions. The British had now pulled up and stopped right under his nose, and they didn't even know he was there. As the attack started, Wittmann sent 4 Tigers up to deal with the British force on Hill 213, and headed into the town himself with the other 2. Wittmann's Tiger broke down almost immediately, and so taking command of the 2nd Tiger, he pressed ahead alone. He approached the village from the southeast, bypassed A Squadron and reached the main street just east of the HQ tanks. He quickly knocked out 3 of the 4 Cromwell tanks from the HQ company, but one tank, commanded by Captain Pat Dias, managed to reverse into cover in a garden south of the street. Wittman then advanced west along the main street, passing Dias without spotting him. Unfortunately for the British, Dias's gunner wasn't in the tank, so he was unable to take advantage of a perfect flank shot. At the western end of the street, Wittman ran into B Squadron. This time the British were more prepared, and Wittman's tank was hit at least once by a Firefly. He decided to reverse out of danger and head back east. He turned around, but then came face to face with Dias's tank, which had emerged from the garden and attempted to stalk Wittman. Dias hit Wittman's Tiger twice without effect, and his tank was then knocked out. 2 of the crew were killed, but Dias escaped, and was able to join B Squadron. After knocking out Dias's tank, Wittman rejoined the rest of his detachment to take on fuel and rearm, and moved to attack A Squadron. He approached under cover of some woods, knocked out the M3 half-track nearest to the village, thus stopping the British from retreating west out of the sunken road, and then the Firefly. He then helped with the destruction of the rest of the column, a mix of tanks, half-tracks, Bren gun carriers and lorries, although this was by no means a solo action, and he wasn't the senior German present. Around 25 armored vehicles may have been destroyed in this attack. This time the Germans were supported by infantry, so the British crews were killed or captured. Meanwhile back in the village, Major Ed of B Squadron decided to send 4 Cromwells and 1 Sherman Firefly to try and make contact with A Squadron. They advanced through side streets to the south of the main street, but couldn't get over a railway embankment in the southeast of the village. They then took up a position in a square just to the south of the main road, with a 6-pounder anti-tank gun in an alleyway a little further west, ready to ambush the Germans if they returned. Although not strong enough to knock a Tiger out, the 6-pounder anti-tank gun could disable a Tiger by hitting the tracks, and this is what the British gunners did. Unable to move, but still in a strong position, Wittman spent 20 minutes, using his Tigers machine guns and 88, to shoot at anything that looked like a target. The British withdrew and Wittman and his crew escaped to the north. The situation was left undecided as both sides withdrew, but it was the Germans who reacted faster, Wittman returning that afternoon with 20 Panzer IVs of the Panzer Lehr Division. The issue was finally decided that evening, with another SS attack using more of the Tigers of the 1st SS Panzer Division, that had since arrived. By the end of his action at Villers-Bocage, Michael Wittman had single-handedly knocked out 10 main battle tanks, 3 light tanks, 2 anti-tank guns and 13 armored half-tracks. The British inflicted a costly repulse on the Germans, and then retired from the salient. The battle also cost the Germans several Panzer IVs and Tigers, their first loss in Normandy. On the British side the losses were very heavy, with around 20 Cromwells, 4 Sherman Fireflies, 3 Stuarts, and other armored vehicles knocked out, 62 dead and 100 prisoners. The British attack had come very close to success, but the lucky arrival of Wittman's Tigers on the previous day, and his initial successes in and around the village, had robbed the attack of all momentum. For his actions during the battle, Wittman was promoted to SS Hauptsturmführer, and awarded the Knight's Cross of the Iron Cross with oak leaves and swords. The German propaganda machine swiftly credited Wittman with all the British tanks destroyed at Villers-Bocage. The propaganda campaign was given credence in Germany and abroad, leaving the British convinced that the Battle of Villers-Bocage had been a disaster. In fact, its results were less clear-cut. If you have enjoyed the story of this amazing tank battle, please do subscribe for more. Many thanks for watching.